The certain and uncertain position battles the Texans face heading into training camp, the most interesting Texan of all, and a battle that we might not be talking about enough, as well as a salute to a team the Texans kind of own. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Ayy. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop.
We made it. We made it. We made it. We have made it to July. We made it through June. Worst month of the year, especially when it comes to football season. And here we are. July is here. 3 weeks from now, we will be in season. It's not preseason, anything like that. It's in season, especially around here in the locker room and on SNL. Shout out to our new sponsor, BobTack, for sponsoring the segment. We'll tell you more about how they can help you out with your needs, your safety needs a little bit later on. But I want to talk about the position battles that we have heading into camp when it comes to the Texans. The most certain, the most uncertain position battles when it comes to the Houston Texans. And last year, it's kind of crazy because the things many felt certain about, they ended up being the biggest disappointments. Now, some of them because of things out of the Texans' control, some of them because of things very much in control, which is why they've made some of the changes. And the offensive line last year, there seemed to be a majority belief, not here, that the offensive line was going to be better than the previous year because you were getting guys back and you were going to have more of a cohesive unit. We obviously did not witness that, and the offensive line has been completely depleted. You have a new offensive line coach. And it's by far, spoiler alert, the biggest uncertainty that the Texans have heading into camp. You also felt really good about the wide receiver group for different reasons. You acquired Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell was coming back from his injury, and you thought that he was going to be able to do his thing. And that really didn't happen even before he got hurt. And Stephon Diggs, you never really clicked with all the receivers in. Nico Collins got hurt. And now you have a completely different wide receiver group. Not the same vibe as the offensive line. You feel a little bit different. But the two things that you felt really certain about, they didn't go according to plan. So what are the most certain position battles heading into training camp? What are the positions that you feel best about when it comes to the Houston Texans in regards to the Houston Texans? I would say, obviously, quarterback. There's no quarterback competition. We know that. So quarterback, obvious. CJ Stroud, you feel good about him. No threat right there. Maybe feel a little bit different about him with the new system and everything, but you feel good about quarterback. Wide receiver, in a strange way, uncertainty when it comes to what it's going to look like and how these guys are going to be. But I almost feel like it's up there when it comes to, especially the position groups that carry a handful of guys, whether it be 5, 6, whatever. You almost feel like you could pencil in who the wide receivers are going to be that make the roster. You know, Nico's going to make it. You know, Captain Kirk, a.k.a. Christian Kirk.
Captain Kirk has arrived. I repeat, Captain Kirk has arrived.
So, you know, he's going to make it. You drafted 2 guys in the second round, Jalen Nolan Higgins. You know they're going to make it. There's 4. And then you have Nico Collins, obviously. There's 5. And then it's, I guess, between Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie. And Xavier Hutchinson looks a lot better. And quite frankly, he's kind of a little bit more of an outside guy, and Mechie's a slot guy. And they've brought in 2 slot guys. So despite the lack of confidence, you obviously don't feel as confident as you did last year in the wide receiver group. it's really there's pretty much a certainty outside of maybe one spot. You know who your wide receivers are going to be, and there's reason for optimism when it comes to that. You also go on the other side of the rock, the guys that are going to be guarding the opposing receivers, the secondary, the Texans secondary, it's pretty set in stone. There's no position battles when it comes to it. CJ Gardner-Johnson, we wondered what it would look like with him and Jimmy Ward. We don't know what's going to happen with Jimmy Ward, but CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to be one of your starting safeties. Kalen Bullock's going to be the other. And you have two guys at corner that you feel great about, which, by the way, you didn't feel great about Kamari Lassiter last year. There was reason for optimism relatively soon, and they clearly had faith in him, but you didn't really know about Kamari Lassiter. But in the secondary, you're pretty certain what's going to go on there. On the edge, you have a pretty good idea what's going to go on there as well. And then there's really not anything uncertain like at the top of the depth chart. Now, there is one area on the inside which we talked about, and that is the offensive line. And that's uncertain in every area. The offensive line, we have no idea what the offensive line is going to look like. We have no idea who's starting where. You can follow the money and assume that Cam Robinson's going to be your left tackle. You also have two young tackles. You got to think if they're comparable to Cam Robinson, maybe they get the nod. Which one of them is going to start on the right? Is Titus Howard going to be a good guard? Who's going to be your center? Andrews is all of a sudden center one. You have Jared Patterson behind him. Juice Scruggs isn't doing anything. You got a number of guys on the offensive line. We don't know what direction it's going to go. You also don't know if they're going to be well coached because they have a new offensive line coach who also happened to be here. So you really don't have to watch the wide receivers. I mean, you're going to. But if you're going into training camp and you're trying to focus in on position battles and you're trying to see who's going to start, who's going to play, all that, the receiver battles, not worried about. Quarterback, obviously not. Defense, pretty much set in stone outside of some depth pieces. The offensive line, which is what you're going to be watching. And there's also the offensive line has, and we'll get into this a little bit later on in the show, here in the locker room, as July is upon us. You also have a guy that I think is one of the most interesting signings that the Texans have made in a long time. And when he was initially signed, you just thought he was just another body. And I'm not sitting here saying that they've added some sort of all-pro caliber guy, but when it comes to what they're trying to do and what they're trying to implement, I do think that you can look at this guy and look at some other guys on the roster and maybe think that hopefully the influence that those guys have had based on their background and their experience, hopefully it goes into an area that the Texans need to perform much better than it did last year on the O-line. I'll lay out that case in a sec. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Damon Smith says the Andrews thing is interesting. Curious to see how it plays out in camp. Look, we know Cole Popovich has the history with him. We know that he at least knows what Cole Popovich wants. But it's one thing to be playing center in OTAs and minicamp. It's a completely different thing once, you have a defensive tackle lined up over you and you're actually having to block. So we'll see what this guy looks like. Maybe he's some sort of hidden gem. Maybe he's someone that they just like because of the familiarity. Maybe there's going to be that type of vibe when it comes to this new offensive staff. We don't know, but I would agree with you. The Andrews thing is beyond interesting. I mean, when we went to mini camp and in OTAs, the first thing we were looking at was how are they going to line up on offensive line. I did not have Andrews. Nonetheless, with the second team, I did not have him with the first team on my bingo card. It didn't even cross my mind. Matter of fact, when they signed him, I thought it was almost like some sort of courtesy, some sort of favor to maybe see Popovich because he knows him from the Troy days to see what's going on, and then maybe just a body in camp. I did not think that Jared Patterson would be backing him up, and I did not think that Juice Scruggs would not be even be on the top two deep. So the Andrews thing is beyond interesting. It's one of the most interesting things that that is really that really happened in OTAs that we'll have to keep a close eye on. But the offensive line obviously is the most uncertain position group. Then we have a couple of others, and I don't think these are getting talked about too much, but the backup running back position, Dameon Pierce hasn't been able to hold it down in the last couple of years. They've given him opportunity, he just hasn't been able to do it. Dare Gumbawale was actually RB1. I know a lot of people kind of throw up in their mouth at that thought, but he was RB1 because Mixon and Pierce were not a part of offseason activities. Now we'll see what happens with Mixon. I think I've seen like some Instagram videos or whatever of Joe Mixon working out. We'll see what happens. We do know that if Joe Mixon is ready to go, then you have one of the top, 12, 15 backs in the league, and he actually performed at a higher level than that last year. And we'll see what goes down with that. But you need some depth behind him. You did trade up for Woody Marks. You brought in Nick Chubb. We don't know what's going to happen with Nick Chubb. And it'll be interesting to see, I guess, head-to-head how Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce kind of line up in the backup RB battle. On the D-line, I feel like you have a pretty good idea of who your starters are going to be. Sheldon Rankins and Tim Settle appear to be those guys. Maybe Mario Edwards has a chance. But as far as the shuffling and the hockey style that DeMeco Ryans likes to move guys in and out on the D-line, I think you have that pretty set in stone. The backup battles there are going to be interesting. A lot of guys that we're pretty familiar with, and maybe some guys will emerge. They do seem to have a pretty good, unique skill in being able to find guys on the D-line that maybe we're not talking about at this point. But the backup D-line will be interesting. It's also, when it comes to resources and it comes to what they've invested in, it's kind of near the bottom because they haven't gotten to that. You can only invest so much. And then the cornerback situation, the CB3. Last year, you tried to roll the dice on a couple of first-round busts with Henderson and Okudah. Neither one of them could really play, to be quite frank. Neither one of them were good. Neither one of them were competent. Luckily for the Texans, they hit on Kamari Lassiter, so their importance was kind of minimized. But you tried to kick the tires on Ronald Darby. He took your $250K or whatever, and he retired. And now you're kicking the tires on Damon Arnett. Tremont Smith's gotten some looks. Some of the usual suspects from last year. We'll see what that looks like. They do appear to, with the base defense, they're playing kind of the nickel corner, the Jalen Petrie role, where they don't use the number 3 corner very often. It will be interesting to see if teams kind of pick up on Jalen Petrie's potential shortcomings in coverage, and maybe you need that corner, but that's something to keep an eye on. The thing that I don't think is getting talked about enough with Damon Arnett, and I have no problem with him getting a second chance. I'm fine with it. I've wanted them to be looser in that area for a while. I've also kind of understand why some people may not want to give him a second chance, because he really hasn't been that good in the NFL. And that's what's really interesting, is we've never seen Damon Arnett really play at a very high level in the NFL. Now there have been injuries. He's admitted that he couldn't get out of his own way. There was obviously some stuff going on off the field where he wasn't putting out his best version of himself, which he's been open about. But I do think it's important, because a lot of people might not be familiar with Damon Arnett's game. So someone in the messages brought up, the name Pac-Man Jones or something like that. And he can't hold Pac-Man Jones's job. Like, Pac-Man Jones was a top 10 talent when he was selected, and he had already shown that he could play in the NFL at a relatively high level when the Cowboys and then the Bengals were willing to bring him in. Arnett has been a disappointment on the field, even in spite of all the off-field stuff. So the hope that Damon Arnett can turn into maybe a reserve quality corner, but it goes a little bit deeper, and it goes a little bit beyond, well, maybe this guy can get back to what he was, because quite frankly, what he was, it wasn't very good. There can be reasons, we just haven't seen it. So it wasn't very good. So that's also kind of the counter to people that say, well, why would you roll the dice on someone who might not be very good? Maybe you're just kind of trying to loosen up the, as John McClain calls them, standards, behavior standards or whatever. But I'm fine with the second chance, but I do think it needs to be made clear. He was a surprising first round pick with the Raiders. It was the same draft where they took Henry Ruggs, and this is off field aside, but they took Henry Ruggs over CeeDee Lamb. Like before any incident happened, that was a bad decision. And I've heard that Mike Mayock kind of tells people behind the scenes that, you know, he wanted CeeDee Lamb and Gruden wanted Ruggs. That's neither here nor there. But in that same draft, they took Arnett, who many thought was a second round guy. Same draft, by the way, as Jeff Okudah. And it just needs to be made clear that he's never really been a really solid NFL corner. So we'll see if he can be that. But I do think that kind of needs to be made clear with people who perhaps aren't familiar with his game. Tay says he's a good depth piece. I don't know what that would be based on. Damon Arnett was never good, and he's never performed well. Now he said he was on his way back before the video got released, which, by the way, the video kind of dropped. It was actually 10 months after it actually happened. But I don't know how he's a good depth piece. If he were a good depth piece, then props. You know, if you had a good CB3, he's going to be competing with these other guys, and we'll see what he's about. But I don't think that we can say in good faith or based on anything that we've seen that Damon Arnett is a good depth piece. Just haven't seen it. We'll see. He's getting the opportunity. He seems to be the best version of himself, but we haven't seen Damon Arnett as a good depth piece. It hasn't happened. So we'll see what that looks like. I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad that they're open-minded to it, but we'll see what it is. OO asks if I know what a second chance is. Oh, Tay was saying Douglas. Okay. OO says, do I know what a second chance is? Yeah, and this is actually probably his fourth. This is Damon Arnett's fourth chance. And I've said that I want the second chance. I'm supporting them giving him the second chance. It's probably his fourth chance. Because he's gotten released a couple of times. And quite frankly, I think the dumbest arrest for Damon Arnett isn't even the one with the guns. The guy told him he was going to show up to his address and told him to pull up and stuff. And we went through the DM on the notorious gun stuff. I think the dumbest arrest by Damon Arnett was the one where he's driving without a license and with a suspended license. The cop pulls him over. He drops a folded up dollar bill on the ground, picks it up, puts it in his pocket. The cop's nice enough to let someone drive him off. This is a day before practice. The cop's nice enough to let him drive off. And then 25, 30 minutes later, he drives by the same cop, and he's actually driving after the cop let him off. You can go look at the video on TMZ. The cop is just disgusted because he gave him a second chance. It gave him another chance, and Damon Arnett drove by. So, yeah, I know what a second chance is for sure. That's the arrest that I think is the most stupid, and it's the night before practice. That's the one that I think is dumb. But, yeah, I do know what a second chance is, potential battles that nobody is talking about when it comes to the Texans. I think tight end 3 is something to keep an eye on. There seems to be kind of an assumption, and I'm not questioning the assumption. I know that CJ Stroud thinks very highly of him. I know D'Amico thinks very highly of him. And I know that whenever he's against the ropes, he's come through. But let's keep an eye on tight end 3. It's kind of one of Nick Caley's specialties, and it's probably going to be something that he's going to be passionate about. Let's keep an eye on the tight end depth, because right now I think, and if I had to bet my life on it, if I had to fill out a depth chart or guys that make the team at tight end, I would definitely put Dalton Schultz. Then I would put Cade Stover. And then I would put Brevin Jordan. But let's keep an eye on that and see what Brevin Jordan looks like and if he fits into what they're trying to do. It wasn't like a heavily invested contract. I think the legend of Brevin Jordan kind of grew with how poorly Dalton Schultz played last year. So potential battles that nobody's talking about. Let's keep an eye on TE3. I think we need to keep a closer eye on what the tight end room will look like. And if someone like Irv Smith is able to kind of push Brevin Jordan and be someone that they like a little bit more. They're definitely going to keep Lachey out of Iowa. He will be here, but I don't know if he's ready to immediately contribute. He looks pretty good, but he's still a little bit raw. But let's keep an eye on Brevin Jordan before we say he's undoubtedly, unquestionably going to be on this ball club. Let's keep an eye on what happens with Brevin Jordan. Keep a close eye, because I do think that when we see this a lot, when someone has a crappy performance or they don't perform at a high level, sometimes the guy that's hurt, the legend kind of grows, and you say, man, that guy we could really use that guy. We've never really seen Brevin Jordan put it together for an entire season. We've seen him survive, and he can obviously do some things, and he's capable of doing some things in the open field that these other guys aren't. I was intrigued to see what he would look like last year before he did get hurt. But let's see how he bounces back. Let's see what he looks like. That's just something to keep an eye on. There's always surprises. There's always surprise cuts. Let's just keep an eye on that tight end depth chart before we just assume that those are going to be the top three guys. I think that's a good thing to check out and see. And I like Luke Lachey a lot. I think Lachey is good. I just don't know how Brevin Jordan fits into what Nick Caley's going to do. And I also know, and he's told us, that Nick Caley covets and he values the tight end position more than anything else. It's his specialty. So when you bring in this guy to fix the offense, you're not going to sit there and say, all right, you got to keep Brevin Jordan around if he doesn't fit into what they do. They're entertaining the possibility of the fullback, and we'll see what that looks like. I think the guy, he does have, he seems to be a better receiver than they give him credit for. Can he block? Don't know. We don't know if he's going to use a fullback or not, he being Nick Caley. So let's keep an eye on that, and let's keep an eye on Brevin Jordan before we just say this guy is undoubtedly going to be on the top three of the tight end depth chart. Just a little something nobody's talking about here as we talk about position groups. I'll talk about the most interesting Texan coming up in a sec, but first let's look at what's going on in Cleveland right now. And it looks like the Cleveland Browns are putting together a nice little stadium where they're going to have an entertainment facility. They're going to have an indoor option, maybe a permanent dome. And I got to salute the Cleveland Browns. I got to support the Cleveland Browns. This is what they put up. I know that the Cleveland Browns have been very good to the Texans. But they have right there, they're talking about Huntington Bank Field, completely fan-centric, first of its kind of design in the NFL, dynamic venue that draws visitors from across Ohio and beyond. For concerts and significant sporting events throughout the year, this premier facility will anchor a major lifestyle and entertainment development and be a catalyst for one of Northeast Ohio's largest economic development projects ever, and something our community will be proud of and can enjoy for years to come. We appreciate the support of state leaders and their belief in this transformative project. Closed quote. And look at that beautiful indoor stadium. And some people say, well, you need an outdoor stadium in football. Let me just say this right now. I think outdoor stadiums need to be eliminated in football. I think they need to be eliminated. And I actually salute the Browns for this. If you still want to have an outdoor stadium, cool. But Buffalo, all these places, cold weather, keep the stadium closed during the week. If you want to open it up when the game comes around and make fans uncomfortable and play in the snow, so be it. But with all the money that these teams have, and with all the money that fans are paying to go to games, and people will say, well, that's what football's about. Go look at the ticket prices of some of these games during the season in the playoffs when it's cold. Like you could get into the Kansas City game for like $25, playoff game, $50 for a playoff game. If you want to open the roof when the game starts and maybe just get a little rowdy and say, oh, there's the snow, that's fine. But seeing fans clean up seats and all that, there's no need for that. And quite frankly, we need to get past the outdoor stadiums. I'm fine. I've enjoyed watching them as much as anyone else. But most of the times when I've watched them, I haven't been out there freezing my ass off, getting frostbite, not even being able to drink my beer because it freezes before. So Cleveland Browns, they kind of take a beating around here. I know that they've kind of been an easy target, rightfully so, because the Texans have taken decent advantage of them when it comes to trades and all that. But salute to the Cleveland Browns, because outdoor stadiums need to be eliminated. If you want to have an outdoor stadium, you at least have to have an indoor option. Period, point blank, end of story. Got to figure that out. And I do not think Deshaun Watson ever steps foot in that stadium as a Cleveland Brown. For all the people in the chat with the Deshaun jokes, I would say by the time that is built, which will be a few years from now, I will probably assume that Deshaun Watson has zero to do with what they got going on in there. But props to Cleveland for handling that. If the Hardos in Buffalo want to open the stadium when the game starts and maybe there's just kind of an excitement factor, that's fine. But there's too much money going around for it to just be a foregone conclusion. And there's no weather delays or anything like that. That's the other thing with baseball. Baseball should be doing the same thing. And you got like 25-degree baseball games, and these are stadiums that were built. Like Minnesota doesn't even have an indoor option in their baseball stadium. That's a joke. That's pathetic. So yeah, just get rid of these outdoor stadiums. And the other thing that I think the Texans should do, and this is one of my strongest takes. I think the Texans should always have the roof open when it's not cold, because I think the Houston humidity in October, September, whatever, I think that it's a big advantage for Texans players, and it's really not that big of a deal. It's not like it's that big of an inconvenience. They're going to be practicing in like 108, 110 weather. They're used to it. It's like going to a cold weather stadium. So when the Texans go play the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, or they go play the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, so they go play the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs, and they have to go outdoors, even stuff that's not considered cold in that place is a significant advantage for that team. It's a significant advantage for that team. And again, if you want to open the stadium before, that's fine. But with where it is right now and these permanent outdoor stadiums, it's a significant advantage. So why don't the Texans, if that advantage is going to be there when it's humid outside, open the damn roof? Fans are even used to it. We're used to it being hot. I'm not sitting here saying that when it's 110, you got to open the roof. But when it's 90 degrees and that's as hot as it gets in Buffalo or Kansas City and they're coming down here, open the damn roof. Use your weather advantage like they use theirs. They're playing in these outdated, old-ass outdoor stadiums. Open the damn roof. Get your advantage. Make them have to drink some pickle juice on the sidelines or something like that. You're used to it. They're not. So make that happen. 100%. Open the damn roof. You don't need it closed. But if it's crappy ass winter weather, close it quickly. Salute to the Browns. We don't really salute them a lot. And quite frankly, they haven't deserved it. Unless you want to say thank you. Speaking of thank you, shout out to BobTack for being a sponsor of the show. They're going to take us up to the preseason. I talked to Reed, and I know his dad, Bob. He's been in the industry for 45 years. It's locally owned and operated. They're located in Pasadena. They've been serving Houston and beyond. They got nationwide shipping. If it's local, it's free, and they will deliver it to you. They specialize in safety supplies, PPE, spill control products, trucking, maritime supply, gloves, FR coveralls, protective clothing, all things safety anything trucking, they got it. They even got some extra stuff. Go to BobTack.com. You can get anything. You can call them. You can text them. You're actually going to talk to them. That's one of my most frustrating things with businesses these days is that you're basically on the line with someone who doesn't care. They're not located. A lot of times it's not even a real person. These are real people. They care about the safety where you're at. They're capable of providing all things safety, PPE related, oil, hazmat, spill control, as well as trucking, any kind of gloves that you want. You can figure it out. Shout out to BobTack. Shout out to his son, Reed. They got you covered. I know we got a lot of truck drivers. If y'all need trucking equipment, anything like that, anything safety, they got you covered. You're going to pay less. You're going to get more. Keep the local businesses alive, and shout out to them for supporting us. You can call or text at 409-744-8225. You can go to BobTack.com. They got you covered. Shout out to BobTack for doing what they do and sponsoring the show. So I want to talk about the most and the Texans have made some interesting signings throughout the years, and they've brought in some interesting guys. And as soon as the Texans sign someone, you immediately, as someone who's covered the squad, you immediately dive into what that guy's about. You try to get as much information as possible about their career, what people are saying, maybe some stuff that nobody's talking about. And a lot of times when they make a signing, it's just like, oh, ho-hum, this guy's just another body. I call them WikiLeaks, guys that you just have to look up and figure out who they are. And a lot of times you get kind of pleasantly surprised by what the Texans may or may not do when it comes to signing guys and how interesting guys are. But there is someone who the Texans signed who I think might be the most interesting man that the Texans have ever signed.
He is the most interesting man in the world.
And I didn't expect this when they made the move. I saw and I heard what people were saying, and it seemed valid. It seemed like he was just another body. Laken Tomlinson, 10 years in the NFL. He's played with San Francisco. He got paid by the Jets. He's played with a number of teams. And immediately when he was signed, the running joke on X was, man, this guy's barely better than Shaq Mason. And in a lot of advanced statistical areas, Shaq Mason, even last year, even overweight and what he was, he graded out better than Laken Tomlinson. And Laken Tomlinson was barely in the top 50 when it came to guards and where guards were ranked. But then you dive closer and you take a closer look at this Laken Tomlinson guy. And as you're seeing the news of Laken Tomlinson, you look in the comments and you see that both of his former teams passionately think he sucks. They think he's the worst thing ever. If you listen to Jets fans, and you got to take what they say with a grain of salt, because Jets fans are just, they're nasty. They're weird. They like to slide in DMs if you say something about the Jets. It's a passionate fan base. Shout out to Jake Asman out there doing his thing on YouTube, one of my digital mentors, and he's still doing his thing in radio as well. But the Jets think that he sucks. Seattle fans think that he sucks. Despite the fact he made the Pro Bowl with the 49ers, he's looked at one of those guys. He's looked at, if you just listen to what those fan bases say, as a guy who kind of cashed out and hasn't played good football since. But then you take a close look at this guy. And this is where it becomes really, really interesting when it comes to Laken Tomlinson. You look at this game log and you look at these stats and you see that this guy, and they didn't start the 17-game season until 2021. This guy has started literally every football game that he's played in, and he hasn't missed a game since 2018. You go back to 2018, this guy has started every game. So if he's as bad as everyone says that he is, and I'm talking about Jets fans and Seattle fans, It's wild that this guy has started literally every single game since 2018. That's impossible that's damn near impossible for good players to do. Really good players, because of how dangerous the game is and how physical the offensive line position is. You go to 2017, the guy started 15 of 16. So he has started every game but one since 2017, and he started every game since 2018. Then you look at the games played. He's missed one game in 10 seasons. One game in 10 seasons, which is just absolutely insane. And the other thing that I find interesting about Laken Tomlinson is the one position group that we've talked about with the Texans that is having a complete overhaul, rightfully so, it was pretty bad last year, is the offensive line. And we've seen DeMeco Ryans bring in some of his guys to kind of shift the culture. Now there's talent around, but he's brought in guys to shift the culture. And maybe it's not time appropriate, but Jimmy Ward was one of those guys who DeMeco Ryans brought in from San Francisco and on the field and really off the field before. We got to see what happens with him. Jimmy Ward was one of those guys who shifted it. You also saw Azeez Al-Shire do it and immediately become a captain and one of the leaders and one of the guys that DeMeco Ryans will pound the table for. And you could kind of see the impact on the defense. Laken Tomlinson was in San Francisco. He played with Trent Williams. And Laken Tomlinson, if you watch OTAs and you watch minicamp, and I know that it wasn't open practices, but that's why I'm kind of your eyes. He seems to be the leader of the group. If you just walked into the practice facility and you looked at the Texans offensive line, you said, okay, you got to spot out and you got to tell me who the leader of this offensive line is. It's kind of him. He's rallying the troops. He's getting guys to the right spot. He seems to be one of the more vocal. Trent Brown's also vocal, but he's not actually out there. But he seems to be the leader of the group. And I heard him on Texans radio and on the Texans YouTube. And we know who the best offensive lineman was for the Texans last year, but we also know what the criticisms were. Laken Tomlinson also kind of sounds like the anti-Laramie Tunsil. And if they truly are trying to shift the culture for better or worse of this offensive line, it kind of feels like this might be the guy to do it. Let's hear from Laken Tomlinson, a little bit of what he had to say on Texans radio, and just listen to this. And if you are trying to change things, I think this might be the right guy.
When I get here, I just get to work. Yep. You know, I have to really worry about. Obviously, I got to learn new teammates, learn how to work with new teammates. But just being here for OTAs, I mean, that's why I'm here for OTAs. I'm getting to learn to work with the guys and just showing them how what I'm about.
Yeah. As an O-lineman, what do you get out of OTAs? You got to know where to be, obviously. You're learning this Nick Caley system. And discuss that a little bit, if you could, Laken, about how this is different or similar from other systems you've run.
For sure. Obviously, coming here working with Nick, it's new for everybody, obviously, new offense. Mm-hmm. And working here with Nick, with the guys in the offensive line room, is this period right now is very important because this is where we start our chemistry. It's very important for me to be here because I want the guys to be able to see how I work and kind of learn how to work with me so I can learn how to work with them. Especially that's live or die offensive line. When you have those five guys out there, they got to be able to operate as a unit. So the more exposure you have around the guys, it's just better for their offensive line and better for the team.
Yeah. You mentioned
he is the most interesting man in the world.
I'm not sitting here saying that they got some sort of all-pro caliber guy. But when you look at a guy that has started that many games, knows what DeMeco's about, is talking about the importance of all being together. He's clearly the leader of this unit right now. When they first signed Laken Tomlinson, I just thought they were just bringing in a body, and he might end up being that. But the value might go beyond his talent, especially if you're trying to shift things. And a lot of times whenever guys are trying to shift culture, much like how DeMeco kind of brought in his guys and you see guys bring in their guys to shift it, it goes beyond their actual performance. And nothing needs to be shifted and nothing needs to be improved more than this offensive line. And you look at how this guy moves, how he's been able to to stay on the field as long as he is, how he sounds and stuff like that. This guy went from someone who was kind of a wiki elite where all you hear is bad things about him. He might be one of the most interesting guys with the Texans. And quite frankly, if he is the leader of this offensive line, given just how much this offensive line has held this team back, not just last year, but over the course of franchise history, if he can just be a little piece in kind of a snowball effect, or dare I say, in the words of D'Amico Ryans and others, iron sharpening iron, might be the most interesting Texan, and quite frankly, might be one of the most important. Laken Tomlinson, my gosh, wasn't that familiar with your game? Once you kind of dig into it and look at it,
he is the most interesting man in the world.
Keep an eye on him. That's an interesting sign. It's just fascinating to see how many games he has played. So Laken wasn't really familiar with the game. I am now. It'll be interesting to see what exactly that looks like for sure. I don't know how a guy plays, and Frank says, I don't know how you start every game that over that time period, regardless, and especially if you supposedly suck. I don't know how you do it there. It's crazy. But you type in Laken Tomlinson on X, you're not gonna see too many nice things said about him from the former fan bases. But God, 10-year vet, 1 game missed. I mean, it wouldn't be bad for the guys to follow his lead. And you're kind of hearing some of the stuff they're saying. We'll see what goes down with the offensive line. But right now, there's really not much certainty at the O-line. But he's an easy guy to root for, and he's extremely interesting, to say the very least. My goodness. Laken Tomlinson. We keep a close eye out on him. So those are the position battles, the certainties, the uncertainties. We are into July. We're going to be 3 weeks away. We will be in West Virginia. Myself and Cody Stutz will be there. So follow us there. Follow us on SNL 4:00. Be sure to subscribe. This channel, we're 4 years into it. We're approaching 1 million. And this is the metric that matters most. This is the metric that I absolutely love. We're approaching 1 million hours watched on this channel, which is just really, really overwhelming. It's the present and it is the future, and it's going to be fun. And per the usual, when it comes to this Texans stuff, shout out to BobTack for the sponsorship. Again, let them take care of all your safety needs. Got that in the description. But when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate y'all for coming through. We made it through June, baby.
Won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give. We got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number 1. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah.